Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Labor Day weekend is officially over, and summer's over too. I'm just gonna have to admit reality. It's over. I mean, it's not technically over, but it's over. It's fine. There's a lot of wonderful things in the fall. We mentioned this last week. We got football. We got apple cider donuts. That's exciting. We got cute sweaters and boots, ladies. Men, you'll enjoy us in those outfits too, especially the younger ladies. We've got Thanksgiving. You get the first snow. Okay, it's too soon to get excited about it. Anyway, we're going to be fine. And we also have the little thing called the presidential election. That's happening too. It now means, with the end of Labor Day weekend, as it always does in an election year, it's on, that the race will kick into high gear, and we have some 7 weeks for the candidates to make their final pitch on who should be the next president of the United States. It is so tight. It's a super duper tight. Truly, it could go either way. There's so much news to cover, but first, if you did not see our exclusive interview with several of the National Guard veterans who served with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, yesterday's show is a must watch and listen. You can check it out on youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, or you can just go on podcast and download that show. It's getting huge reception, and the numbers are big. People are loving it. We spoke with these vets about their criticisms of Tim Walz's long history of exaggerating, although that's a kind way of put it, of lying about his service record and why it should matter in this race.
This is how I know Adam Smith, that he is, again, a liar, because he told me and other sergeant majors in the meetings that you can count on me. I will deploy with my unit. His words to my ears and others. So that's how I know. I'm not making it up. I have thousands of soldiers that I took into combat and brought back all well. They know me. If you knew my blood was boiling right now, because Walz has done nothing but lie to feather his own bed his entire career. That's how I know. I was there. I just didn't make this up. Tom and I just didn't make this stuff up. I was in the meetings. I was part of it. Soldiers died. Soldiers went on this. You think their parents didn't want their soldiers to take a pass, take a knee, and maybe go on the next one, or go on something that maybe isn't so dangerous? You're darn skimpy. He came out and said he was going to go. All the time working behind Doug Julien's back, going behind the chain of command's back to secure his retirement.
But whenever he found out, prior to his official leaving of the National Guard, he knew Iraq was coming, and he was telling you, I'll deploy, notwithstanding the fact that he had said already, I'm going to run for Congress. He's saying, I'll go with my unit.
Oh, absolutely.
And didn't.
And he didn't. No, he didn't. If the officer blows the whistle to leave the trenches, and I'm the guy who's motivating everybody to leave, and I go, nah, not today, I'm not going. You guys go right ahead. That's a morale crusher. It chews away at the fabric of the military and its ability to do its mission. And it may not legally be wrong. It is morally indefensible. We had other soldiers that put their lives on total lockdown because of this, because they went to defend their country. They had soldiers. I'm not going to let my soldiers go forward without me. I trained them. I put myself right there with them. I'm going to suffer every hardship that they do.
And that's the position he was in.
That's the exact position he was in. And he walked away from it. He wasn't going to, he didn't care. It was all about him.
That's an actual retired Command Sergeant Major Paul Herr speaking there. The interview has received massive media coverage, except from corporate outlets like the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and the Associated Press. But then maybe they just don't care about military stories. Maybe they don't care when the controversy involves military service personnel. Oh, wait. Wait. Perhaps you heard about the controversy erupting over former President Trump's visit to Arlington National Cemetery last week. The Trump campaign posted a video of the visit on TikTok. showing the former president laying a wreath and meeting with Gold Star family members in Section 60 at Arlington, where recent U.S. war dead are buried. Vice President Kamala Harris was quick to pounce, yes, pounce, saying in part that Arlington is not a place for politics, and that, quote, Donald Trump's team chose to film a video there, resulting in an altercation with cemetery staff. Let me be clear. The former president disrespected sacred ground, all for the sake of a political stunt. The Gold Star families, with whom she has not visited, were not impressed with the vice president's statement. Mr. Trump's social media releasing this video of them responding to Ms. Harris.
Kamala, your statement is nothing more than a political spin to help you look better. You have never walked a single day in our shoes. Our kids were murdered because of your administration.
My name is Steve Nakui. I'm the father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nakui. And your administration killed my son.
But earlier today, your post regarding the incident at Arlington National Cemetery was brought to my attention. After reading it, it caused a reaction with me. You indicated in your post that you support the military and military families. I, for one, have not seen that support. It's been 3 years since my son was killed in action, and myself, my family, and other Gold Star families have not seen any support from you or your administration.
Your recent remarks related to Trump's visit to Arlington are filled with nothing but lies and deceit.
A heinous, vile, and disgusting post put out by Kamala Harris.
But there is one thing that you said in your statement that was true. No one should be running for president if they cannot honor military members, their families, as well as veterans. So I guess that means that you should step down, Kamala.
What's more, former President Trump is not the only one to post images of himself at Section 60 during a campaign. In fact, the sitting president, Joe Biden, also used images of himself at Arlington to make political statements when he was running with Kamala Harris. During his 2020 presidential campaign, Joe Biden posted an image of himself as vice president standing over a grave in Section 60 as part of a Memorial Day message. He also had a photo op in Section 60 in 2021 after announcing the withdrawal from Afghanistan. He loves Section 60 as a backdrop to his politicking. And of course, Mr. Biden has been lambasted by those who lost loved ones during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan for repeatedly, look at this, checking his watch as their bodies were returned home. That's her boss. I don't remember her statement condemning any of it. And recently, at his only debate with former President Trump this year, President Biden seemingly forgot that these 13 servicemen and women even died at all.
Truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable because let me just tell you something, okay? So she releases this story, this statement, trying to capitalize on this. So annoying. We just set up for you just a few of the examples of what her boss and her administration has done, right? But let me read you some of the post that Kamala Harris put up on X over the weekend. Oh, it's a solemn place, a place to honor American heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice, not a place for politics. Tell it to your boss, Ms. Harris. Trump's team chose to film a video there. They disrespected sacred ground, all for the sake of a political stunt. Okay. Then she goes on to say, if there is one thing on which we as Americans can all agree, it is that our veterans, military families, and service members should be honored, never disparaged, and treated with nothing else than our high respect and gratitude. Is that what your boss did when he checked his watch? So bothered was he having to stand there for the dignified transfer? Is that what you did when you didn't even bother to show up to the dignified transfer when their remains came back stateside? When you didn't meet with them? when you never reached out to them, and when indeed, according to the families, you were invited to go to this same memorial, something the White House now denies, and you did not show up. Is that what you mean by treating the families with nothing else than the highest respect and gratitude? She goes on to say, and it is my belief that someone who cannot meet this simple, sacred duty should never stand behind the seal of the President of the United States of America. Interesting, isn't it? It is stories like this one that we cover like no one else, that we promise to you that we will cover like no one else, as the Harris-Walz campaign continues to dodge giving clear answers on this issue and so many others. And now, just days after her first TV interview with no others scheduled, Vice President Kamala Harris has deployed a new trick to avoid the media. I mean, it's an age-old trick, but it's new for a presidential candidate. We've all used it at least once when you pretend to be on the phone to try to avoid that pesky neighbor or annoying acquaintance who's trying to talk to you. Only she's running for president. She has sat for one interview. She had a total of 16 minutes of talk time, and that is the only non-scripted exchange she has had, other than some surface-level 4-minute exchange plainside a few weeks ago. That's it. They tried to get her to answer another question or two as she walked onto her plane, and she pretended she was on the phone. It was obviously a dodge. I mean, it's like so ridiculous. And even if it wasn't, even if she actually had a phone call, obviously it was scheduled then. It was created for this moment so she could avoid having to answer a question from the press. She's terrified of them, even though they love her, even though their whole mission right now is to get her elected. That's how afraid she is. Great person to talk to all this about today, and that is Ric Grenell. Ric was a key part of Donald Trump's administration, serving as ambassador to Germany and as acting director of national intelligence. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Did you know there's nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right, there's a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months in office. If the president's able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. But there is hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in these uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax-advantaged status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future right now. Text MK to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. So much in the news up your alley today. Ric, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Megyn.
Let's just start with the absurdity. The media has zero interest in not one, not two, not three, but 4 vets who actually served with Tim Walz coming forward to say he's a coward and he abandoned them at their greatest moment of need. Zero coverage from New York Times and CNN and Washington Post. But this scuffle over whether Trump inappropriately took pictures at a place Joe Biden's already taken pictures and released them as campaign efforts, that's dominated the news media now for 8 days. What do you make of it?
And not a single reporter has decided to dig in, mainstream reporter, dig in and see if Joe Biden had used that same area, as you pointed out, to do some sort of political statements or pictures. It's really outrageous what's happening to our media in Washington, D.C. Look, I watched your interview yesterday with the 4 vets. I don't know of anyone else who has spent the time to find people who served with Tim Walz, because I do think that it's important that we speak to people that served with him. I know his brother is now endorsing Donald Trump, but people who know him the best, who served in those incredible moments where you sign up to serve your country. And I should be clear, I didn't serve in the military. I have incredible respect for people that do. But what I think is really terrible, and my friends who have served in the military are really outraged about, is to pretend that you had this valor moment when you actually didn't. When you actually were in the heat of the moment, you fell back. And this is something that's real to me. When I became U.S. ambassador to Germany, I didn't have military experience, and I felt like my chief of staff should be somebody who really understands the military even more than me. So I asked this first lieutenant in the Army, who I knew, if he would come to Berlin and be the chief of staff at the embassy. And Megyn, he told me it was a dream job. He would love to do it, but he was literally on his way to Syria. He's still in the United States, about to deploy to Syria. And he said, I have, 6, 8, 12 men that I've trained, and I really owe it to them to bring them home alive. I told their families that I'd bring them home alive. So I need to go. I need to finish this duty. And then when I come back, if the job is still open, I'd love it. And I remember telling him, wow, the job will still be open because you're the exact person that I would love to have in this job. So we just held it open. He went to Syria. And then when he came back, he became the chief of staff. Those are the moments. Those are the people that in that pressure time when you have to decide, are you going to step up and are you going to give up yourself and sacrifice? Those are the people that you really want around you. And I think Tim Walz and what he's done in that moment where he cracked and he went back, but then instead of just going away quietly, realizing you didn't have it, you pretend like you did. And you have this moment of valor, talking about using weapons of war to make a policy point on guns. I mean, I find the whole thing to just be unbelievable. And the fact that the media isn't digging in and talking to these people who know him best and questioning him, and he's not being transparent, the campaign's not being transparent. I find the whole thing to be just typical swampy Washington, D.C. We got to move away from this.
It is amazing to me that this media has the nerve not only to ignore these guys, right, but then they take this controversy over what's happening at Arlington and try to blow it into a week plus story without pointing out the fact that Trump is allegedly in trouble here because he accepted the request, the invitation of the Gold Star families to honor the fallen, their fallen loved ones. She not only didn't go, and again, the Gold Star families say she was invited. The White House now denying that. We'll get to the bottom of it. But she not only didn't go, she's part of the administration that sent them to begin with. And where's the media write-up about that? About I was the last person in the room and the withdrawal was a success, and praising exactly how it was done after it was done, and never meeting with the families. None of that, right? That no one's talking about the fact that she has made zero time for these grieving Gold Star families. Trump repeatedly has met with them, but the media's only too happy, Rick, to run with, oh, but he took some pictures, therefore he's evil.
Yeah, look, what's happening in Washington, D.C. is truly pathetic. I mean, I know world leaders who would die to have the press corps in Washington that Joe Biden and the Democrats get, that Kamala Harris is receiving right now. There are people around the world that realize the Washington, D.C. mainstream media, and you could list them, right? It's NBC, it's AP, it's CNN, New York Times, Washington Post. It's all of them who just constantly defend whatever the Democrats do. And I really, the key to this whole thing is that you have these young reporters who go to Washington, D.C., and it's a big, fun city now. It's no longer the Jeffersonian place where you go for a short amount of time and then you leave to go live under the rules you created. Now we've got huge budgets, we've got lobbyists, we've got reporters. They all go to church together. They all go to school together. They're never going to write stories that create a smaller, less powerful Washington, D.C. with a smaller budget. They're never going to do that. They want Washington, D.C. to be bigger, better, badder, meaner, because it's their city. And that's the problem, is the rest of us who live outside of Washington, we have to stop asking for those people inside Washington to reform themselves. I've said this before, but it would be akin of like coming to Los Angeles and saying, I've got a great idea. Let's get rid of movies. And everybody says, kill them. We don't want them here. And so we need to start sending people to Washington that are not of Washington, whose social life is not in Washington. I'll tell you one great example of a senator who already lives that is Ron Johnson. He gets out of Washington as fast as he can. And he literally, his whole life is back in Wisconsin. And I love that. I think we need more people like that.
Yeah, at least you have a shot of staying normal. It's a shot. I do want to give you, here's Christy Shamblin. She's the mother-in-law of Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole Gee, who served and was killed at Abbey Gate. And Christy actually spoke at the Republican National Convention, so she may look familiar or be familiar to our audience, but she went on CNN, and here's what she said about the invitation.
We invited both President Trump and the Biden-Harris administration, and we didn't hear back from the White House. We were happy to welcome President Trump to lay wreaths with all three of our families and our wounded, some of our wounded from that day. And when he came to Section 60, it was at our request.
Okay, so there you have it. Now, NBC News reports that the White House denies that they were invited. NBC News does not quote Christy Shamblin and say, we heard it specifically on the record from a Gold Star mom that the invitation was extended, nor does it appear they did the legwork to figure out to whom did she send the invitation. They just report it. They just go with it. No, they weren't. No,
Are you
it didn't
surprised?
happen.
It's NBC
not
News.
in the least. It's just disgusting. Look, it's so disrespectful. And the thing, Rick, that's really pissing me off is that I know that the media sucks. I know, but like this is very disrespectful to the Gold Star families. And while they're doing it, they're cloaking themselves in this, we're the ones who care about the Gold Star families mantle, right? Like we care about treating the families with respect. Meanwhile, neither she nor her boss have done that for 4 years. The watch, she didn't show up. And by the way, speaking of NBC, look what they said. Look what they tried to claim. Kamala Harris was at the dignified transfer when the 13 service personnel came back. Look at this.
You know who the families also invited? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Where were they? Joe Biden was sitting at a beach. Kamala Harris was sitting at her mansion in Washington, D.C. She was 4 miles away. 10 minutes. She could have gone to the cemetery and honored the sacrifice of those young men and women. But she hasn't. She never has spoken to them or taken a meeting with them.
Well, they did meet with them during the dignified transfer. They were with them at the dignified transfer.
Kristen Welker lying. NBC had to later issue a paper statement saying that wasn't true. Harris didn't show.
I mean, look, this is the problem. I've been calling out all of NBC and calling them Comcast Media. I think people need to realize that Comcast is funding this, and this is a Comcast Media outlet. They don't check. Whatever some young staffer at the White House tells an MSNBC or an NBC reporter who's also 26 years old, whatever they say, they just regurgitate and put on Twitter. There's no checking. There's no journalism. There's no skepticism when it comes to what Democrats tell NBC or MSNBC. It's outrageous. And again, we have to start not only calling it out, but we have to demand better. We have to demand better from places like Comcast. They don't get to gaslight us and then ask us to buy their services. I find it to be really offensive, and somebody needs to hold them to account. They push misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, whatever you want to call it, every single day, and they just don't care.
Meanwhile, we still haven't received any apology from PBS after Judy Woodruff lied about President Trump and said he tried to stop the ceasefire negotiations with Bibi because he thought it would help his campaign. She claimed, in trying to clean that up, which she reported on there, that it was all the fault of Axios and Reuters who had it wrong, and she was just repeating their reporting. We went back. Yashar Ali actually broke this. They did not report that. They never reported what she said. There was no report whatsoever that Trump had asked Bibi not to enter a ceasefire. They had originally reported that the two men spoke and then updated the reporting by saying, oh, wait, they both denied it. Nothing about Trump trying to stop the deal. She made that up. She reported on the air, and she has yet to issue an apology for that or her lie about that. PBS, nothing. Zero. I mean, at least NBC issued a paper statement correcting Kristen Welker, their host of Meet the Press, and a massive error. But nothing from PBS. Trump is left to twist in the wind and just let the damage fall, right? That's what they're hoping. Like, let's beat him up. Say he doesn't care about the American hostages. He doesn't care about the Israelis. He only cares about himself. This is another message they're pushing on the Arlington stuff. And all this other stuff just gets completely ignored or lied about, Rick. It's incredibly, yes, frustrating, maddening.
Well,
but I guess this is what...
Angle.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a little angle on that. So when I saw Judy Woodruff say it, I took to Twitter and I called her out and I said, this is not true. This is absolutely not true. I then emailed the executive producer, a woman named Julie, and another reporter that I know there. I emailed them both together. And it took them a little while, but I said, look, I'm asking for you to put me on to counter what Judy Woodruff said, because not only did she make this up, it's not true. But no one sitting on that panel and neither of the co-hosts corrected her. They've got a whole newsroom. If Judy Woodruff said something wrong, somebody in the newsroom, they're publicly funded here. They should be checking to say, oh, that's not true. And somebody can tell the host in the ear to correct the record. So when I emailed this executive producer, it took her a while to get back to me, like a full day. She ended up getting back to me and she said, Judy corrected that on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And made a point of correcting it. And then she said, let's talk about having you come on. I said, well, I'll come on anytime. You tell me when. And they still haven't taken me up on that. But the point is that they get away by just saying things like, oh, well, we said something on X and corrected the record. That's different than actually saying it on PBS in the moment where you push it out to everyone watching, and then it lives in
video. But Rick, she did not correct the record on X. She lied on X. She said, I based my reporting on Axios and Reuters, who were wrong, and that's why I was wrong. That's a lie. Right. We went back and checked the original reporting. Reuters just cited the Axios report, so their hands are clean. Axios, the original reporting, never said what she claimed it did, ever. They never said that Trump tried to stop the deal to help himself. She made that up and then blamed it on Axios. And she's never gone back to correct that, including after we all got to the bottom Axios reporting last week. It's incredibly cynical. And the point I'm trying to drive to is, I know Republicans always have the media against them. I get that. I've been part of the media. I've seen it. I don't think I've ever seen it this bad. I really, I don't know. Was it this bad in 2016 against Trump? Maybe it was. But I've never seen them this bad as they are against Donald Trump.
It was this bad. I think with social media, it's faster and in our face even more. And look, there's no question in my mind. The reason they kicked off Donald Trump, they kicked him off Twitter at the time, is because he was able to take the messaging straight to the people. I know they came up with some phony reason of why they did it, but they were really annoyed that he wasn't sitting down with reporters to let them figure out what he said and then be the filter, so to speak, to the rest of the world. He would talk to reporters, but then he would also go straight to the people with his exact words. And we could see what the filter was doing and how disingenuous they were being towards Donald Trump and Republicans. But social media allows us to correct the record. You've done an amazing job on social media to jump on and correct the record and call people out. And that is different than when it was. In 2016, I think the media still had the power. Now the people really do have the power. I'm super encouraged that a reporter, a media outlet today, if they say something that's wrong, they get corrected. It's still not good enough because we need journalists to actually do journalism. But we do have the ability to call them out and mock them and show just how biased they are.
Here's another crazy story before we move off of the military. At the Democratic National Convention, one of the rising stars, they're positioning this guy to be the next Obama, was Wes Moore, the Maryland governor. And he got up there and he basically said, we had a terrible bridge tragedy and I fixed it quickly. I mean, that's great. But like, I'm not sure you can be president based on that. And I remember thinking like, why? Like that's nice that he did that. That's good. That's kind of what we expect from our leaders. But what's the story here? And then the more you read, the more you realize they're trying to make him into the next Obama. And he was on the short list reportedly for being her VP choice. She did not choose him. Obviously, she went with Tim Walz. Guess who else claimed they had a military honor they didn't have? Wes Moore, the Maryland governor. Listen to him. Okay, what you need to know is, listening to these sound bites, Wes Moore is not the recipient of a Bronze Star. He did serve in the military. He was not awarded the Bronze Star for Valor. Apparently, he didn't have any problem claiming that he had won that award. However, take a listen to Gwen Ifill announcing that he had received it in 2008.
Wesley Moore, a captain in the U.S. Army Reserve, while on active duty, he completed a combat tour of duty in Afghanistan and earned a Bronze Star medal. Welcome to you all.
Okay, now here's Stephen Colbert, 2010.
You're a decorated veteran of the Afghan War, yes, correct? Get the Bronze Star. Yes. Okay. Now, I am no fan of the smarty pants, but you are a Rhodes Scholar as well.
Yes. And then when he himself applied for a prestigious White House fellowship in 2006, when he was 27 years old, he himself claimed he had been awarded the Bronze Star. This is ridiculous. Ric Grenell, his defense is that he'd been told by his commanding officer that it was a good idea, that he thought he had earned it, and that it was going through the paperwork at the time, but there is zero doubt he had not been awarded it at the time he said he had been. And to this day, he does not have the Bronze Star for Valor.
Look, this is truly the product of a broken media. They don't check Democrats. They just don't vet them. I can tell you, coming from California, whether it's Javier Becerra, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, whoever it is, they don't get vetted by our California media on their way up. It's literally a system where the straight white guy at the top, Gavin Newsom, hands out little DEI appointments, all about characteristics that are irrelevant. Literally, this is the system in California. This is why we're so broken. Every single statewide office is held by Democrats, and the media are all just letting them get away with this. This governor of Maryland should have been vetted by the Maryland media. Why didn't people check to see, did he really receive an award? I can guarantee you, if a Republican says they won an award, someone is checking. If a Republican says they graduated from Harvard, someone is checking. But we don't get that same system on the left.
Mm-hmm. Now the commanding officer says, he's going to resubmit the paperwork so that he can be awarded the medal. Of course, because they want him to be
they're going to give it to
the
him
next
now.
Obama. Yeah, they're trying to clean it up. By the way, I'll just tell you a quick story. When I was in law school, a friend of mine at Albany Law School was applying for the same job that I was at this great firm. And usually they only took one person from Albany Law School. So in that way, we were in competition with each other, even though we were friends. And this guy, we were comparing resumes one day. Mine was thin. All I'd done is gone to college and then law school. And he had not only been an Olympic athlete, but he had served the country in Desert Storm and had been awarded the Bronze Star for Valor, Rick. I knew I was screwed. I was like, oh my God. His name is Brian Farlow, and he was amazing. The happy ending is we both got offered jobs and we both took them at the same firm and we're great friends. But he never told me, 3 years of law school, he never mentioned that he had been awarded the Bronze Star. And even now I went and looked up his professional bio just for kicks. He mentions his military service. He doesn't mention it there either, but I know it's true. And by the way, he then went after a successful law career and re-enlisted to fight in 2007, 2006. Now, at this point, he's long in the tooth. That's a real American hero there. And he got it, I'll just tell you quickly, because he was in this tank unit and he needed to get gasoline. Forgive me, Brian Farlow, if I screw this up. But he needed to get gasoline to the tanks that were at the front. And they were almost out of gas, and he knew. And the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. So that's the way he wanted to take his troops and the gasoline. But his commanding officer said no, because he knew he'd have to go through a minefield. So Brian got out. As the commanding officer, you're not supposed to be front. You're supposed to be like in a couple cars back so you don't get blown up. He got out personally, went to the front, went the straight line, and personally moved the mines. Mm-hmm. You could see them. They look like the size of manhole covers, he told me, and moved them. He picked them up himself and moved them off to the sides, clearing a path. They got to the front. They refueled those tanks and saved the lives of the guys. First thing that happened when he got up there was he got yelled at by his commanding officer, who knew he had disobeyed an order. And that was the guy who submitted Brian for the Bronze Star. I love this story because it does show the selflessness of our troops, the honorable ones. And to lie and say you got that award when you didn't, Wes Moore, is disgraceful.
Well, this is what, as you're telling the story, I'm sitting here thinking of all the people who pretend like they did something like that and climb up and use it. That's the most outrageous thing. You steal the valor from the people who actually did those moments. You steal it because it becomes, commonplace. You put yourself in this group when you didn't do anything great. And that's what makes people angry. And people should be angry. And again, we go back to just the basic criteria of being a journalist is being skeptical of everyone, not just one party.
Yeah. Okay, so on that front, let's talk about Trump and his abortion comments, because he was asked by NBC in Michigan whether he's going to vote for a Florida law. Florida made its abortion limit 6 weeks, but there's a ballot measure in Florida and Nevada and Arizona this November to try to get Democrats to the polls, and they're hoping to vote for Kamala and other Dems, that would expand the abortion procedure, the abortion limits in Florida to be beyond Roe levels. I mean, to 24 weeks, they say viability, which is 24 to 28 weeks that you can have an abortion up to. And there's a health exception for the mother, which any pro-lifer will tell you entirely swallows the ban, any sort of ban. You can find doctors who in the 9th month will say the mother's mental health requires an abortion. So this is why pro-lifers are recoiling in response to this amendment. And Trump was asked about it by this reporter. Do we have it? His comments. Yes, we do, right? Here it is, SOT 19.
You overturn Roe and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
So he doesn't say he's going to vote for this amendment, but he says I'm voting that we need more than 6 weeks, which I don't think is an option. I think it's either you vote for the amendment or you don't. But in any event, now the campaign's trying to walk it back a bit, Rick, saying he wasn't saying he's in favor of the amendment. And, the left is having making some hay out of this, saying he doesn't know where he stands. He's a flip-flopper, just like they say Kamala is. And then the pro-life side has spoken out quite a bit about this, saying, what is he doing?
Well, first of all, you won't be surprised I'm not an expert on abortion, but let me give you my opinion. I'm so thankful that Donald Trump has left this up to the states. I think it's the right decision to not have a federal ban or some sort of a law that would mandate it federally. What I do love is that there's an acquiescence to the states. What works in some states doesn't work in others. And so I think the media is correct in trying to say to President Trump, you live in Florida, how are you going to vote? But one thing that we know is absolutely certain. Donald Trump is pro-life. Look what he's done to the Supreme Court. I do know that through my 25 years in politics, pro-life community has been asking to overturn Roe v. Wade. Every single president promised to go after that and do that. And there's only one that was able to do that, and that's Donald Trump. And so he's demonstrated that he is absolutely pro-life. These questions now, as we get into the details, are very difficult. And I think Donald Trump has been very respectful about the process and is now saying, let's just make sure that the Democrats don't play games here. We should have some guardrails, but let the states figure out those guardrails.
Well, he's gotten articles like this from National Review. Trump stabs Florida pro-lifers in the front. They're unhappy about this and about the fact that he also said he's going to put some policy in place that mandates coverage of IVF, either by the government or by insurance companies. Look, those of us who are pro-IVF, it sounds good in theory, but how are we going to pay for that? This sounds like an Obamacare mandate. And Trump kind of veers sometimes toward big government, which isn't great. Big spending, bottomless, bags of cash, which we don't have.
Look, what I would say about the IVF issue is that we definitely have a population problem. If you dig deep into some of our labor issues and the future of the United States, we have to have a labor force. We have to have birth rates that go up. And we're struggling with that. A lot of countries around the world are struggling with that. And so being able to utilize technology in order to increase our birth rates through IVF, I think is fantastic. We should celebrate technology. God gave us the ability to use technology. I grew up evangelical Christian, and I can tell you every single person in my family, and there are a lot of evangelical ministers, support the idea that IVF is allowing families to be able to have kids, utilizing the technology and the brain power that God gave us to be able to expand their family and have, a celebration of life.
Right. It's just, and I don't mean to diminish your statement, because there are some Republicans who disagree with that, who don't like IVF because it creates embryos that may or may not get used. But IVF costs about $20,000 a cycle. There were about 390,000 of them just in 2022. That averages out to about $7.8 billion for just that 1 year. So where are we going to get the money, right? Where are we going to get the money? We're going to make the government pay, or we're going to make private insurance pay. That's going to jack up prices and premiums. And, it sounds to many just like an empty campaign promise meant to shore up his vote with the women, Rick.
Well, let's be honest about one thing. Donald Trump doesn't do empty campaign promises. I could go through the list of foreign policy promises that he promised in the campaign and delivered when other people didn't. And so I would take it to the bank that if Donald Trump says something, he's going to deliver on it. He's not a politician. He is somebody who is thoughtful. And I can tell you, being in the Oval Office with him, when there are big issues, he's not thinking about partisan politics. He is literally the guy who wants to find a solution to the problems. And a lot of times, as this example shows, he's the guy that doesn't stick with whatever the partisan lingo is. He's looking at the situation and he tries to say, okay, what's the solution? He does get in trouble that he is not a partisan on all of these issues. I'll give you that.
What do you make of the fact that, Dasha Burns of NBC gets in Trump's face to ask him about a voter ballot initiative where Trump lives in Florida? And I saw you raising this point on X. What's Kamala Harris's home state again?
My state of California. And she didn't say anything about the debacle that we just had 2 nights ago about reparations, where Democrats promised Black people in California that they would be paid for all of these problems of the past. They promised them, Megyn, for a year and a half. They've been telling the Black voters in California, you are going to get paid. We've had story upon story about it in the LA Times and the Sacramento Bee. And then in the dead of night, when it was time for a vote, what did they do? They pulled it. They said, we're not voting on it. And people are furious about the being duped. They literally used Black people in California for a year and a half to pretend like we've got something coming for you. And by the way, let's also state very clearly, the Democrats have a supermajority in Sacramento. They don't even, they can't be stopped by Republicans. The state Senate, the state assembly, and the governor, Gavin Newsom, are all Democrats in a supermajority, and they can do anything they want. They pulled the bill, and people are furious. It's a big story in California, and our media is still not covering it.
Where's Dasha Burns with the mic in her face? Oh, she can't because Kamala Harris is on a phone call with her AirPods in. I mean, literally nobody believes that she was actually on the phone. It's just so fake and how she runs from the media. There's one piece of media she's going to run to, and that will be the movies, I think October 11th, because Rick, it turns out that this disgusting film, I think it's called The Apprentice. Yeah. It's by Gabe Sherman, who makes his living attacking Republican white whales. First, it was Roger Ailes for many, many years, and then he died, so he moved on to Donald Trump, is going to hit theaters. There was a question about whether it would. And in this movie, reportedly, there is a scene of Donald Trump raping his wife, Ivana Trump. The movie got a standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. They just released a clip showing Jeremy Strong, the actor who played Kendall Roy in Succession, as Roy Cohn, a young lawyer advising a then inept Donald Trump. This guy doesn't even look like Trump, but whatever. It's this inept buffoon version of Trump who can't make a phone call sounding tough. I'll show you the clip.
Listen, Judy, about 100 reporters were crawling up my ass to get this interview, and I gave you the exclusive. Yes, hello, Judy. This is Donald Trump. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Be excited. Donald, now that the lawsuit is behind you, what do you want to do next?
Well, I intend to acquire the Commodore, and I'm planning on making it the best and the finest building in the city, maybe the country, in the world. Judy, in the world, it's going to be the finest building in the world. It's going to be a spectacular hotel, absolutely spectacular, first class, and...
That sounds very ambitious. Where do you get the drive? You're still so young, Donald.
I got flair, and I'm smart, so I think that's going to make me successful. But I also want to stay humble. Sorry, Judy. Listen, let's do the rest in person, and bring a photographer, okay?
Sorry, all right.
No, I mean, listen, it's your life. You got a ways to go, but you're learning.
Great. So this hits theaters in the middle of early voting and about a month before the big election day.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have such a history with Gabe. He totally lies. I can't tell you how many times we've seen him completely lie and make stuff up. Look, he is the type of reporter, and I use that term loosely, that when you're not on the front page of the paper, when you don't have a story that everyone's talking about, you literally make something up to be able to get into the ethos again. I could name 10 reporters who do that constantly right now. And we know who they are, but the public doesn't know who they are. But one thing that we should be absolutely certain of is that scene right there never happened. It's totally fake and phony. Everyone can see it's not even accurate. Anyone who goes to see the movie is a partisan hack. I think it's going to have absolutely no impact on the election. We've seen everything before, and Gabe he's a buffoon.
Finally, on the foreign policy front, disastrous development.
We get to foreign policy. That's my favorite.
I know. I'm sorry. So much else in the news, but they killed the hostages. Hamas killed 6 of the hostages, including the American. And there's been a lot of anger towards Bibi Netanyahu on the left. If you listen to MSNBC, it's all about Netanyahu. Whose fault is it? And how does this affect our election?
Well, first of all, let's go back to October 7th. Whose fault is it? I mean, Hamas is the one who did it, but they got their funding from Iran. And you know who funded Iran is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And this is just a fact. In the Donald Trump administration, we had Iran squeezed. They didn't have money to pursue a nuclear weapon, and they certainly didn't have money to go out and fund the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of their actors that they pay to go out and cause terrorism around the world and wars. And so when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris came in, they dropped the sanctions, the Trump sanctions on Iran, and they gave cash and credit to Iran. So the total package that Biden-Harris gave to the regime in Tehran was hundreds of billions of dollars. No one should be surprised when you give Tehran hundreds of billions of dollars that you're going to get the Houthi attacks, you're going to get Hamas attacks, you're going to get Hezbollah starting a war with Israel. You literally are funding terrorism. They are to blame. It's now been 333 days, and we still don't have a diplomatic solution. All we hear about is war and more war. You can throw Ukraine and Russia in there too. Every politician is asked, are you for more funding or are you against more funding for the war? It is war, war, war in Washington, D.C. No one is doing peace. We've shoved the State Department right off
this
the
way
map.
Under Trump's administration. I got to run because the computer cuts us off in about 5 seconds. More on that next time. Rick, thank you. You didn't vote for this economic downturn and the high inflation, but you could pay for it at the pump, the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Now, Done With Debt created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done With Debt can stand between you and your bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances. It's starting to sound better. Cut interest, yes. Stop penalties, hello. And the best news is Done With Debt is accepting new clients right now. You do have to hurry, however, because some of their debt relief strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done With Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Matt Walsh's first documentary explored a simple but weirdly controversial question. What is a woman? It was a huge success. Coming up next week, Walsh has a new movie that asks a new question. Am I racist? It showcases the insane anti-racism movement that took the country and world by storm, in particular after the death of George Floyd. In the film, Walsh speaks to anti-racist educators and authors, some of whom you may recognize, about their warped racist ideology. But he also talks to everyday Americans. Here is just a bit of the trailer.
Let's be clear what's happening in this country. It's Nazism. Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up in the 90s, I never thought much about race. Sure, you noticed, but never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Being a white, straight, cisgender man is the top of the pile.
I'm on the top of the pile. That's me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
Can you please leave?
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover. If I want to be an ally, I need to look like one.
What is racism?
Martin Luther King said not to judge people by the...
Martin Luther King said a lot of stuff.
Is America inherently racist? What the hell is that?
The word inherent is challenging there. America is racist to its bones. All of the...
So inherently.
Yeah. The entire system has to burn. And I'm not going to even use save this country. This country is not worth saving. This country is a piece of shit.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Amazing. Joining me now, Matt Walsh, host of the Daily Wire's The Matt Walsh Show and star and producer of Am I Racist? Welcome back, Matt. Great to see you.
You too, Megyn. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I watched it last night and I loved it. So I have good news for you because I watched it with a focus group of two. My husband, Doug Brunt, and I watched it together. And I thoroughly enjoyed it for all sorts of reasons we can get into. But Doug Brunt enjoyed it even more than I did because Doug, who is very affable and a great guy, is not particularly prone to fits of emotion in any particular way. And he laughed so many times, Matt. He loved your deadpan, just demeanor, your comments. There are so many good ones where, like, I have so much I want to ask you about because, like, I don't know if any of it was scripted. If not, you're incredibly clever. Just like your matter-of-fact responses to people saying the most outrageous things and your slow-boil provocateur approach to these people. It was true genius, so congrats.
Well, that's great to hear. I really appreciate it. Slow boil provocateur is probably a good way of describing it, actually. That's a great description of the approach we take in a number of the scenes in the film.
I wondered whether you were getting worried at all about somebody blowing their top because you were very respectful. You weren't, in people's faces, but you would keep asking questions when you were told to stop. You would keep pressing little buttons when you could tell they were on their heels wondering what the hell had just walked into the room. And you didn't stop once they were clearly uncomfortable. So when you were doing all of this, was there ever a moment where you were like, okay, now I might be in trouble?
There wasn't a moment where I ever felt sort of that my safety was in jeopardy or anything like that. But I guess, a lot of people ask when on this film and also with What Is a Woman, that one of the main questions that I often will get is, how do I keep from laughing? How do I keep a straight face when I'm in these rooms? And the truth is that it's, stopping myself from laughing is pretty easy, it turns out, because when you're actually in the room doing this and you're in the room with these people in real time, now obviously this is a movie, so we take, this could be like a 2-hour interaction that I have. We take, there's 5 minutes that appear in the movie because it's a film, but it's pretty intense. And these are really unpleasant people most of the time. So it's looking back at it, of course, it's quite humorous, but when you're in the moment, it's actually not all that funny to me when you're really there and you're watching these people, especially these grifters who this is their whole, this is what they do. They take normal people and they try to break them down. And it's like this brainwashing session that you see in the movie that goes on over and over again.
Yes, this is, it takes almost all of the things we've heard about the craziest DEI pushers and puts them together in one movie so you can see this is real life. These people exist. They've been doing this. They are doing this right now. They hate America, and they really don't much like white people, and they would like all of us to feel the same. So of all people to infiltrate their spaces, Matt Walsh gets in there, and he finds out soon into this film, Matt Walsh is not going to be able to do this as Matt Walsh. He's too well known at this point. People are on to him, and that brings me to one of the scenes that has been released and that's in the trailer. This is Matt after he had attended a white privilege grief workshop, and he gets up to leave the room for a moment, and he comes back and realizes they've figured it out. Here's a bit in SOT 32.
I did everything I could to fit in. I opened up. I was raw and emotional. I told them about my black friends. It was no use. They rejected me, and they called the police. My mere presence in the room caused them pain. I'll never be accepted if I look like this. If they know that I'm Matt Walsh, I'll always be an outsider. I need to go deeper undercover, a whole new identity. If I want to be an ally, I need to look like one. Like someone who is progressive, tolerant, enlightened. Let me think. Have I ever met anyone like that? Ah, yes. Yes, I have. What is a woman?
Why do you ask the question?
It's the listening audience. That's Matt getting dressed up just like you described the look you were going for there.
Yeah, that's the thing. One thing I recognize about this film, and many people have pointed out just based on the trailer, is that it's not the most convincing disguise in the world. It's not like, this is not exactly a CIA level operation where I'm going in and
facial prosthetics and, a fat suit or something. We talked about doing that maybe. We talked about when we first started making the film, what should I do to change my appearance? Of course, the idea of me shaving my beard was floated, which that's off the table immediately. Other kind of things you could do. And we didn't do any of that. It's just a wig and, and
a bun.
And a man bun, right? Skinnier jeans than I would normally wear. And, white shoes is like, that's the whole thing. And then the question is, well, how did that fool anybody, given that everything's still the same, you still sound like yourself? And I think one of the answers to that is that for a lot of these people, they live in such a bubble. They live in this bubble. They never really encounter in their everyday life anyone who disagrees with them. They never intentionally put themselves in a room with anyone who would ever challenge them. Robin DiAngelo appears later in the film, and
it's amazing.
Which, you could see in the trailer. And I would venture a guess. I don't know this, but I would guess that Robin DiAngelo has not intentionally been in a room with someone who doesn't already agree with her in like 20 years. I don't know. So I think that's part of it, that there's a certain arrogance that comes from being in this bubble, and they just never could imagine that anyone like me would ever be in their vicinity. And so they kind of gave me the benefit of the doubt, and the disguise didn't need to be all that convincing because we're sort of using their arrogance and their kind of false sense of intellectual security against them, I guess.
You've got your skinny jeans, your man bun, and your merce, into which you put How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. And when I saw it, I have to say, I really thought your inspo might have been a character from a different Daily Wire production, Mr. Burcham, in which I play Adam Carolla's wife. He's Mr. Burcham. And it's the school DEI policeman named Mr. Carponzi. Here he is.
My name is Mr. Carponzi. My pronouns are he, him, and Z. I'm a heteronormative, cisgendered white male, for which I apologize.
What?
Even got the scooter, which I saw you on in this movie. Tyler Fisher plays that role. Any connection?
No, it's actually, I was amazed when I saw that also in the show, because that's just parallel thinking. I don't know. These two things are being developed at the same time, and I don't know. I guess it's just, if you want to play a crazy leftist, well, you got to have the man bun, you got to have the scooter. So I don't know.
That's what comes to mind.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Okay, so in the movie, and I won't give away all the spoilers because it's fun to watch it unfold and realize how you threaded the needle, but you go, quote, undercover, and you are on a mission to figure out this DEI world. And one of the greatest themes that we just kept laughing was you get your DEI certification at like a workshop, and then you're very proud of your card and use it in a way that is just so perfect, Matt, because you show it to everybody. You're so proud of your DEI certification card. Not everybody has one, as you can say. Not everyone has it. You keep telling everybody. And the joke of it is so on the nose for those of us who have been following this nonsense, which is, of course, anyone can get one. And yet there are all these people who are purported experts in this field who will grift you to the nth degree because they have the little card or they have some diploma that's given them an official education in this nonsense, and they go out there and continue the grift.
Exactly. It's not a real subject. That's the thing. DEI is not a real intellectual pursuit. It's all completely made up and phony. And so being an expert in that is just being an expert in nonsense. Anyone can do it. You'll see in the film that the process that I go through to get my certification is it's not a very grueling process.
No,
in fact,
not rigorous.
Not rigorous. It took about 30 minutes, I think, to get the card. And then once it's not like anyone can say, "Oh, but you just got that one on a fake website." That's not a real one. There is no real one. There's no such thing as being really certified in DEI. It's all completely made up, and you just. Really, all it's about is just showing ideological alignment with these race hustlers. And if you do that, then you have as much a claim to being an expert as anybody else in this field does.
Yes. So I love it because it's not everyone has one. You're very proud. And you then go and introduce us to some of the characters that we've heard of on the news who are pushing this craziness. You mentioned DiAngelo, which everyone must see. If you watch this movie for no other reason, watch it to see the scene where Matt Walsh in his man bun sits down with Robin DiAngelo. I died. Honestly, there were so many great moments in there. Again, we'll keep them a secret, but one of my favorites was when the issue of what is mansplaining. What is mansplaining? And let's just say you're going to laugh just as hard as Doug and I did when you get to that scene. But you did meet a different person who I'd never heard of before named Kate Slater. So before I run this clip, tell us, who is Kate Slater?
Well, she's one of these, she's an anti-racist educator. She is very proud of innovating something, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's called the anti-racist roadmap, I think. And so she's the first person we talked to in the film, and that's why you see in the movie I'm not in the whole costume when I talk to her, because we wanted to start the movie by just, well, she has a roadmap. We want to talk to someone who can kind of, I'm just starting out, introduce me to the basics of what this stuff is and tell me where to go next. And, you know, you'll see in that interaction, she sort of lays out a map for me and tells me, here's what you need to do, here's where you go next, here's what you should be doing. And we set out to put that into practice in the film.
Yeah, you did it. But you clashed a bit, not really, but clashed. You highlighted an issue that actually someone I know actually had in their life. They're not woke, but they were getting shamed for this Halloween costume because it's a white family. So you raised this. Let's watch SOT 31 with Kate Slater.
My daughter's 4 years old. I am an anti-racist educator, quote unquote. She's still watching Disney movies and she is choosing a white princess over princesses of color.
Have you talked to her about that?
All the time.
My 3-year-old daughter is her favorite princess is Moana.
Love it.
It's a good sign.
Yeah.
But then I also thought, you know, there's a little bit of cultural appropriation here. She wants to be Moana for Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we navigate that? Do I go and buy the Pacific Islander native attire for my white 3-year-old?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
But I guess what we might call the Moana problem here is what, on one hand, there's cultural appropriation. On the other hand, there's gravitating towards white characters.
Right.
So it's almost like no matter which way you go, you end up back in racism.
We think every space belongs to us because we live in a white supremacist society.
Is America an inherently racist country?
I think the word inherent is challenging there. If we say...
Fundamentally,
yes. America is racist to its bones. All of the...
So inherently.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's so perfect. Your child must love Moana over any other Disney princess. However, not to the point where she would ever actually want to dress like her or model her behavior, because then you've crossed into cultural appropriation. See rule book, section 40, footnote 10.
Right. That's why we now call it the Moana problem. That you're racist no matter what. And the thing is that it's one of the many moments in the film where it's funny watching it, you know, and we're supposed to laugh at it. And I think that mockery and laughter is an appropriate response to absurd things, and what you just saw there is absurd. But then on the other side of it, but once you go a little bit beneath the surface on this thing, you see that it's actually it's awful too, along with being funny, because this is the damned if you do, damned if you don't situation that these people set up, where no matter what, you're racist. So they start by saying, you're white, you're racist. And then when they have you say, well, what do I do to not be racist anymore? And they tell you what to do. And after you do that, they say, well, good job for doing that, but by the way, you're still racist. And this is a message that they do send to kids. I think I said earlier in that interview, before this moment, I asked her, what's the right age to start talking to your kids about their racism? And she says basically from birth, like as soon as they're born, start letting them know that they're racist. And again, we can laugh at that as sane people because we realize that it's completely ridiculous. But she's serious. And there are people out there that take that advice and start, hammering this into their kid's head from birth. And it's just it's horrendous.
It's abusive. I mean, that you can see she's happy about it. She's proud that she's disgusted by her child who likes white princesses. She's turned herself into a racist of a different kind. I mean, that's obviously she's got some, I don't know, internalized hatred. Her problem is her problem unless it winds up in my kids' schools, which it has. This is why the movie was so necessary. So was there one thing in particular, Matt, that made you choose this as your next subject after the huge success of What is a Woman?
Well, it's hard to say one thing in particular. I mean, I guess if there was one thing, it would be the big thing, which is in 2020 when just the kind of racial insanity that took hold in 2020 after George Floyd. And a lot of the things that we saw after 2020, none of it was new, really. I mean, even the riots we'd seen before, but it was ramped up to the nth degree. And so that's probably the main thing that had me thinking about it. And beyond that, it's cultural, like noticing that, I say earlier in the film, you hear in the preview, that I can think of myself growing up in the 90s, and it was not a racial utopia. I'm not claiming that. I realize that you had the OJ trial, you had the race riots in LA and that sort of thing, but that sort of stuff was happening, and we're never going to live in a utopia. We're human beings. We're tribalistic by nature. We're flawed. You're always going to have things like racism. That's always going to be a part of the human experience. But my own anecdotal experience growing up in a racially diverse area and going to public school and people of all different races, it was like you noticed when people were a different race, but you weren't focused on it intently all the time. And you weren't sitting around thinking about, oh, am I racist? Was that a racist interaction? That wasn't a part of what you were doing. And recently that's been the case. So it seems like we're very much going backwards. And we are. And that's because people like these grifters that we expose in the film, that's what they want. They very intentionally, they're taking people who otherwise wouldn't be that focused on race, and they're telling them that, no, you have to focus on this. You should be focused on this all the time. You think you're not racist because you don't hate people of other races, but actually you are. And in fact, if you say you're not racist and think that you're not racist, then that means that you're even more racist than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And they just get people up in their own heads. And it's like this cycle of confusion and resentment that everybody gets caught up into. And it's just evil.
We see Matt go through all these meetings, and we'll go through a couple of them still, but at the end, you teach your own DEI course, and it's amazing because it's pretty disastrous. But you put to use every lesson you learned in the film. That Matt Walsh, who's teaching the DEI now, the student has become the teacher, is literally just doing exactly what you were told to do by all the DEI experts that we met. And then we see it in practice, and it's just horrific to see it play out in front of your eyes. Like, oh my gosh, you won't believe what people do, what people say, but they do. And I mean, it's almost like you can see how people in the mass psychosis can be almost hypnotized into doing terrible, absolutely evil things if enough people in authority around them tell them it's what's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we tried to do in the film. That was the point of the film, really, was to, whereas with What is a Woman, we have this central question that I'm just asking, almost blank slate, sort of basically skeptical the whole way through asking this question. With this, the kind of twist on that is that asking questions, but rather than remaining skeptical, we decided I'm just going to believe whatever I'm told by these people. So I'll accept whatever they say, and then I'll try to put that into practice, and I'll try to do it as deliberately as I possibly can, and so that rather than sort of explaining why what they're saying is terrible, we want to show people what actually happens when you put this into practice, and that does lead in the end to my DEI seminar that I put on, and you'll see in the film it starts a little bit crazy, it gets a lot crazier. We have a couple of things at the end of that seminar that we know we want to try, and we had no idea going in whether the people in the room would go along with it or not. And I really hoped, I think you asked at the beginning, was I ever worried in these scenes? I was actually worried here because in a way it's like, we're going to take this someplace. I hope they don't go along with it because that's really depressing if they do. On the other hand, if they don't go along with it, then it doesn't really work for the movie as well. But at the same time, I'd rather have faith in humanity than have a good movie. And unfortunately, they follow us all the way down the rabbit hole because what we found is that once you start playing on people's just guilt that they carry around, they'll go anywhere. They'll go along with anything. Yeah. And that's what these grifters have certainly discovered.
They can be exploited. The interviews are so great, and most of the time you sit there thinking, how on earth did he get these? Because you also did press appearances in your fake role, in your man bun. And that's great. You highlight him throughout as like this expert. So how did all that come about, to the extent you're willing to tell me? Do you tell Robin DiAngelo? I assume you don't. It's Matt Walsh. How do you get these people to sit across from this other version of you?
Yeah, I don't want to go into all of how the sausage was made on that, but I will say that, well, everybody signed waivers, I will say. They all agreed to be filmed, and so that was all above board. But beyond that, I guess I just go back to what I said earlier, that they live in a bubble and they're very insulated. And so that worked against them in this case. I mean, any of these people at any time, they could have put a stop. They could have got up and left. They could have said, I don't want to continue this. They could have done that at any time, but they didn't, because I think, again, they're very insulated from the real world in many ways.
Is there a big reveal, Matt, like between you and your team and the subject? Like, before you dropped the trailer, a few days ago, did Robin DiAngelo know that she was part of like a Matt Walsh documentary?
No, there's no reveal. We, the reveal was the trailer, I guess, for them, but not on the day. Robin DiAngelo, we had our session with her, I guess, and she left, amazing. And everything was friendly. I shook her hand and said bye, and we parted ways. That was it.
So all these people find out now, or when they see the movie?
Yeah, they do. And so far as I know, none of them have said anything publicly. I don't think we've heard from Robin DiAngelo. I think shut down her Twitter account. I don't know if that's connected, but seems likely that it was. She hasn't said anything publicly. I don't know if she will. You kind of assume that she will eventually, but also there's not a lot she can say. I mean,
she makes an absolute fool out of herself. Keep going.
Right, and we don't. And it's not like there's deceptive editing where we try to make it seem like they said or did things they didn't do. None of that happens. This is all real. This is what they said and did in real life, and so maybe that's one of the reasons why so far they haven't said anything, because there's not a whole lot to say.
Right. What can she say? She is in the midst of a plagiarism scandal right now that also could be related to the Twitter account. It's unbelievable. Of course, like all these so-called experts we wind up finding out, yes, they're frauds, but they're frauds in multiple ways. And so the Free Beacon did an in-depth report on Robin DiAngelo. Not only is she accused of plagiarizing, hold on a second, I'm trying to find it, but she plagiarized minorities. Matt, Robin DiAngelo, according to the Free Beacon, not only stole thoughts and language from others in connection with her PhD dissertation, but several of the scholars were minorities, including lifting paragraphs, this is attributed to the Beacon again, without proper attribution, omitting quotation marks, and in-text citations, including of an Asian American professor at Northeastern University, Thomas Nakayama, and his co-author, and then of Stacy Lee, an Asian American professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And this is even more egregious because she wrote on her website that you must always cite and give credit to the work of BIPOC people, meaning Black, Indigenous, people of color, who have informed your thinking. When you use a phrase or idea you get from a BIPOC person, credit them. Otherwise, Matt Walsh, you're guilty of white privilege and racism.
Exactly. Well, I will say, slightly in her defense, that she's probably not the first white person to copy off an Asian person to finish an assignment. I might have done that a time or two myself when I was in high school, but really in this case, it's easy to see how that happens, and I'm sure that there's plagiarism. I don't know this for a fact, but I feel pretty confident that if you were to check many of these prominent anti-racist scholars and do a little plagiarism check, you're probably going to find a lot of it. And the reason is that, again, it's not a real subject. Like there's not a lot to say. It's all so empty and fake that all they're doing is just recycling kind of the same idea. Really, with these anti-racist people, there is one core idea. There's basically one insight, which is not really an insight because it's not true, but their one core idea is that white people are inherently racist and are the oppressors of history, and everybody who's not white is the victim. And that's not even, a straw man or trying to oversimplify their point of view. That is their point of view. And that's really it. Everything just kind of grows from that root. And so in any paper, if you're to sit and read, I actually read Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility, in preparation for our interview with her. And it's really just that. It just circles around that idea over and over and over again. It's not surprising that they end up recycling each other quite a bit.
The only person you didn't get, I assume you tried for, was Ibram X. Kendi, who he's like Kamala Harris in his aversion to sit-downs. He will not talk to anyone or debate anyone. That guy will only go into the safest of safe spaces. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, conservative, liberal. I mean, he just doesn't talk. He puts out his books and he lets that nonsense stand for itself.
Yeah, he does. And we did reach out to him, and we found that Kamala Harris is a good analogy, that he's just not, he's very, very careful about who he sits down with, which is why you don't see him pop up in very many interviews at all. And that's because maybe he has a certain amount of self-awareness that Robin DiAngelo doesn't, in that if I were to try to read his mind, maybe at some level he recognizes how thin and shallow a lot of this stuff is, and he knows it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, so he's careful about subjecting himself to it.
Mm-hmm. Unlike Robin DiAngelo, who talks a lot and charges a lot of money, including $15,000 to the Matt Walsh team. But that's the lead. You got off with a bargain, let me tell you, Matt Walsh, because her therapeutic workshops can cost up to $40,000. She makes almost $1 million a year in speaking fees. She is she's in the top 1% of American earners. She has now 3 houses worth millions of dollars. So her grift is quite effective. And all you need to do is say things like this, which she said on a webinar in March of 23, and you too could have several $1 million, homes, and be on the New York Times bestseller list for years. SOT 35.
I'm a big believer in affinity space and affinity work. And I think people of color need to get away from white people and have some community with each other.
Just got to get away from us. We're so annoying, and especially Robin DiAngelo, for that matter. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back, and we've got to talk about the round table. The audience is going to remember this. Those crazy lunatic women who will charge you $5,000, I think, to sit around your dinner table and tell you what a racist you are. Matt Walsh infiltrated one of those. It had the most hateful people of all the hateful people in the movie, and it was fascinating to watch. We've got a clip, more with Matt right after this quick break. So we love our dogs in our household. Even Strudwick, he's sweet and he's kind of a mess, but I absolutely adore that thing. He's such a good, terrible, great dog. Anyway, I can't imagine life without Strud and Thunder. They've got a great life, but some dogs, as you know, are not so lucky and they need our help. Okay, that's why I am very happy to tell you about Delta Rescue. Now, whenever you're going to donate to any sort of an animal shelter or group that purports to help animals, you've got to hear the words no kill. Otherwise, you're donating to an organization that might end that dog's life if they can't find him a home. But Delta Rescue is the largest no kill, care for life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses too, and they provide all of these animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. They've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Aw, look at these videos. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and our Strudwick, but Delta Rescue will help the pups who don't have love and need it. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. If you're tired of the same old coffee from those mega corporations pushing their woke agendas, listen up. It's time to take a stand and support a brand that truly embodies American values, Blackout Coffee. These guys stand with hardworking Americans who believe in family, faith, and freedom. They roast some of the most incredible coffee you will ever taste using only premium grade beans, roasted, and then shipped to you within 48 hours. And for the cold brew fans, Blackout Coffee is excited to announce the launch of their 2 new ready-to-drink cold brew coffee latte options. Don't settle for less. Make the switch to Blackout Coffee. Head on over to blackoutcoffee.com/MK or just use the code MK when you're checking out for 20% off your first order. blackoutcoffee.com/MK. The code is MK. Join the movement. Taste the difference. Remember, with every sip, you are supporting a brand that stands for America. Be awake, not woke. Here is that clip I promised you before the break as Matt, in waiter gear, infiltrates one of these "you are a racist" sessions where you can pay somebody $5,000 to tell you those horrible things about yourself and your country. Watch this.
White people are starved for these conversations.
We are. We're so starving.
Yeah.
We are so starving for this.
Anyone else want to say anything?
I'll just say one thing. I'm so glad we can have these conversations, and I'll be done. But I'm just so glad that we could all get together to have these conversations. That's all I wanted to say.
Is he an actor? Are you an actor?
Oh, no.
Can you let us, we're trying to listen and trying to have this conversation.
Okay. You know, we're all acting all the time in our lives. And I think that that's part of the problem, you know? That it's like we're all trying to play a part rather than just being real and having these uncomfortable conversations. And that's what I'm always trying to tell people, especially, you know, white women. No offense, but
no, but see, like, you're a white dude. There's power positions, and you know, it's pointing white people pointing fingers at each other is not helpful.
You know, I've been on this journey for so long, and just to see you guys at the table having this conversation has been really enlightening for me. Anyway, I got the DEI certification, and I'm just on the journey. All right, you ladies have a great night.
Decolonize yourself. Do your own white supremacy dismantling. And then you can start to bring in other people.
Can I just say one last thing? Can I just propose a toast?
He's back.
I mean, just raise a glass if you're racist. And that's the thing.
Cheers. Oh, I'm not racist. Let me
To racist. Well, all the rest of it. To racists.
To racists. Who were those 2 lunatics at the top of the table?
So that's Syra Rao and Regina Jackson, and they run the Race to Dinner program. And that the program is basically they come to dinner and you pay them thousands of dollars, and they'll sit there and explain why you're racist. And that's what they did in that scene. And you know, of course, in real time, it was like 2 hours of this, just them sitting there talking to these white women and just breaking them down, you know, emotionally, intellectually, explaining to them why they're racist, having them confess, you know, instances of them being racist. Really just, it's the most intense brainwashing session I've ever witnessed, and probably the only real brainwashing session I've ever witnessed in real time in the room. And it was pretty disturbing to watch. But, when we decided to make this movie, I had heard of these race to dinner things a couple of years ago. And when we decided to make this movie on this subject, the first thing I said, we got to get into one of these race to dinners. We have to get there. The problem is that the dinner is only for white women, which is pretty interesting. So when we called them and we asked about, is it possible for a man to attend? They said, no, you have to be a woman. But then that brings us back. Now it's like a sequel to What is a Woman? Because that brings us back to the question, well, what do you mean you have to be a woman? What is that?
Right.
And I think if I remember correctly, the way that they threaded that needle, because their real answer was, well, no, you have to be a real woman. But they didn't say that. So they said something like, well, you have to be someone who was socialized as a woman. That's who we allow. So anyway, that ended with me not being able to attend. So we had to find some other way to get in the building. And as it turns out, you can be a waiter serving the dinner and be a man, and that's okay. So that was our loophole that we exploited, and we kind of went into that scene, and I knew that my goal was, well, I wanted to get them to toast racism. I knew that. But before that, I wanted to earn my seat at the table. I had to somehow find a way to sit down at the table, and then I'll know that I've sort of completed that step of my anti-racist journey, which we did.
You nailed it. That Saira Rao is the most hateful person in this entire film. She's disgusting. What an absolute pig this person is. She hates America, and she hates whites. I mean, deeply hates. Am I wrong?
Oh, I'm not wrong at all. She says it herself. She says it about America. America is a piece of S, I believe she says, her words. And she's very clear. She doesn't like white people. We know that from the film. We know that from her Twitter history. I think she also has left Twitter recently. So if this film had something to do with that, then I think that alone makes this movie worth it. Right.
Totally.
But yeah, she's full of that. That's obviously what motivates this person, is a real resentment towards white people and wanting to find an outlet for that, so that she could kind of very thinly veil it in anti-racism or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I walked away with no doubt of my own opinion of her, that she hates whites, hates America, and keeps finding these suckers like these poor women. I'm sorry, but they're pathetic too. Every single one of those women is absolutely pathetic for agreeing to this, for paying this money, and for letting this woman speak to them that way. I have half a mind, not for a documentary, but just for kicks, to invite her. I have a couple of different places where I spend my time, and she wouldn't know it was me. And I'll just show up, and then she and I can do battle. It'll actually be really fun. I'm a white woman. Go ahead and reform me, Saira. Let's see how it goes. I think it's going to be fun for us both. She was so annoying, but seeing you needle her and tweak her and ultimately expose and thus embarrass her is very gratifying. That's how you wind up feeling at the end of this, even though there are infuriating moments, like when seemingly normal people sign a petition to change the George Washington Monument into
the George Floyd Monument. Yeah. And by the way, that was another one. We went into that. We wanted to do this petition in D.C. And I honestly, I was like, nobody thinks of me as being optimistic, but I discovered making this movie that I was an optimistic person, because I honestly, we went to do that scene, and I was saying to the crew, I don't know if anyone's really going to sign this. Is anyone really going to sign a petition to change? Yeah, maybe you could get people to sign a petition to take George Washington's name off the monument, but to replace it with the George Floyd Monument, who would sign it? And we found that our problem was the opposite. We were having trouble finding anyone who wouldn't sign it.
Oh my gosh.
Just the vast majority of people we stopped, white or black, they were, absolutely. They were ready for it. They thought it was a great idea. And I find that, incredibly depressing, I have to say.
That webinar that we showed the Robin DiAngelo clip from, there was good news in that thing. We aired it in March of 2023 on the show because she and these other DEI leaders are lamenting their loss of power. They could feel it by March of 23, starting to wane, their influence starting to wane. And so is there any good news in all of this in your travels? Did you see some shoots of grass, shoots of green there on this nonsense losing power and starting to ebb?
I think so. I not so much in making the movie. Most of the places that we went to and the rooms that we were in were all people that were true believers. So not a lot of light peeking through the darkness there. But culturally, yeah, I think that look, just the fact that everybody has heard of DEI, and I think the vast majority of people have a negative. It has a negative connotation for the vast majority of people. That alone is a pretty good sign that DEI is reaching its peak. I think if you got 100 random people into a room and asked them how many of you have heard of DEI, probably 98 of them will say that they've heard of it, and most of them will sort of say while rolling their eyes because they see it as either a silly thing or something worse. So I think it's reaching its peak. But what you have to look out for is, okay, eventually DEI goes away. Nobody talks about it anymore. All the DEI initiatives go away because it's just, people see it as so ridiculous and toxic and harmful. But what you have to look out for is the people who promote this stuff, they're not going to go away. So they're going to try to repackage it as
It's
something
already
else.
being rebranded. They're calling it now belonging at the New York City schools.
Well, there you go. The belonging. I mean, to me, that sounds even creepier somehow. So the repackage to me always sounds worse, but yeah, exactly. So they take it, they get rid of DEI, but they don't really get rid of it because the ideas are still there. And the ideas really are so embedded, especially in the academic world, especially in academia and in the school system, that, to really root those out is going to take, that's a years-long process, really.
And in the Democrat Party, where Matt Walsh infiltrated the DNC when it was held in Chicago as your alter ego, as your man bun alter ego. And we saw a video of you just wandering around behind I think it was a CNN live shot in your character, which was amazing. Here he is behind an interview of Chuck Schumer. So how'd that go for you, Matt? And what did you learn?
Well, I learned, for one thing, that apparently I'm not well liked at the DNC. So I was shocked by that.
Shocking.
I couldn't believe it. So we went to their DNC Expo thing, which is in a different building, and I got kicked out in like 20 minutes, escorted out by just flanked by security guards and cops that walked me out. And they said that I'm not welcome back in the building. But the thing is, that was a different. So they said I can't go to that building, but there's a whole other building where the actual convention is happening, and they didn't say I couldn't go there. So we went there next and just walked around the floor. And as you could, I didn't do it. I just walked around. I actually didn't do anything. And that alone was enough to really infuriate a lot of people on the left. Just my mere presence in the room, which I think is interesting. And also, it's like, what are you hiding something? Shouldn't you be happy that I'm there being exposed to your ideas? Shouldn't you embrace that and welcome it? But they didn't, apparently.
They don't like having their sacred cows attacked, and now you've attacked two of them. So since you made What is a Woman, which really was, genuinely an important film, and really got a conversation, if not started, rolling in earnest in ways that it hadn't been prior to that film, how do you think we're doing on that front? Because I'll tell you something quickly. We're down at the Jersey Shore for the summer. We went to see a play at this little theater down there. It's a cute theater, usually family friendly. And it was supposed to be about the Go-Go's, like Head Over Heels it was called. And but it was like Shakespearean times. So it was like Shakespearean language, but every once in a while they'd break out into a song having to do with the Go-Go's. So it was kind of fun. Brought the whole family. Next thing I know, some character's declaring herself non-binary, saying she goes by they, them. Then there's another character who dresses as a woman for the whole time in order to see the girl whose father won't let him in to see her. And it turns out at the end, he really liked being both a girl and a boy, and he's going to stay flipping between the two. There's adultery, it just keeps going. And I'm like, there's lesbian kissing repeatedly on the stage. Now, this is not Broadway. This is at the Jersey Shore. And I've got to say, it felt like a real setback to those of us who are on the side of sanity. And I hate to sound like, 200 years old, but just family values. Keep that shit out of the family value theater. I don't want to see it. My kids, because, I do what I do and you do what you do, were laughing. They were looking at me laughing because they knew I would not like any of this. And indeed, they were correct. So how are we doing on that front?
Yeah, I think, well, in spite of that, it sounds like a pretty grotesque experience. I think that, I want to say that generally things are heading in the right direction. We have a long way to go. But I think you can look at it politically, you can look at it culturally, and politically, there have been laws passed in many states outlawing the castration and mutilation of children, which is a big step, not nearly enough, but a big step forward. Republican politicians, for the most part, are much more open about talking about these issues than certainly they were 3 years ago. So I see that as progress. And then just culturally, I think that it seems like more and more people are fed up with this and willing to call it out. Look, when we made What is a Woman, we went around and did man on the street interviews. This was like 3 or 4 years ago, talking to just normal people on the street about their take on this issue. And we find the majority of people at that time, of course, they knew what a woman was and they knew that men don't belong in the women's restroom, but most were not willing to talk about it, or they were giving us answers that we knew they didn't believe. It was clear they didn't believe it, but they thought they weren't allowed to say what they actually think. I think that if we went to those same places and did those same interviews again today, I think we'd find a lot more people who would be willing to say on camera, yeah, a woman's a female. No, men don't belong in the women's room. Boys shouldn't be on the girls' sports team. I think there'd be a lot more people willing to say that. So that's
one
why
of the
I think
main reasons. One of the big reasons is the work that you do. Matt, great to see you. Thank you for everything. Remember, the new film is Am I Racist? And it's out September 13th. Support Matt and go see it. We'll be back tomorrow with Glenn Greenwald.